So here we are again, Andy. You're outside, I'm inside. I did try to get outside, but it turns out I can't record these things on my phone. I think everything's conspiring against me to get outside. But anyway, I'll put up with it for another week. Um, where are you?
I'm in Urla in Turkey, and we are just getting into a wingfoil racing World Cup. Yesterday, there was not enough wind. Today, the wind has just kicked in the last half hour, and they're about to start a marathon race with a rabbit start. So a power boat going upwind at 30 knots and the whole fleet fanning out behind the power boat on a reach, and then into a square course and a 30-minute target time for the winner, which will probably mean maybe close to an hour for the ones at the back, because there's quite a difference in skill and ability. And it's going to be a full cardiovascular workout, because they make it look easy, but yesterday, so one of the riders said to me, "If you're not dying, you're not trying." So that's the motto in this world of keeping the wing foil up on above the surface and flying along at 30 knots. Quite a lot of effort.
That's actually interesting to hear that the race is even half an hour. I mean, we're so used to seeing modern racing down to sort of 15 minutes and maybe 20 minutes max, but half an hour for the leaders and an hour for that's amazing.
It is, because there's a lot of work on the forearms unless you are working with a harness, and increasingly they are using harnesses like they do in windsurfing. So that takes the load off a little bit. But this first race is all about organising the fleet into qualifying groups, and then they go into smaller groups where they do short course racing of target time 5 or 6 minutes, and they'll do roll after roll of 5 or 6 minute races, and that's much more typical. But yeah, we like to have this long distance race to kick things off and to sort of sort out the pecking order for the qualifying groups.
Oh, I see. So it's not every race is like that. So how big's the fleet?
It's about 60. It's about 40 odd men and 20 odd women, or maybe 45 to 15 or something. A lot more men involved than women at this stage in the racing. So it'd be nice to see more women come into this. Hopefully it keeps on growing. We always get massive interest around the world when we're doing one of these events, because there's so many recreational wing foilers. And
good. So you said that there was a very little wind there. It's something. So how much breeze have you got today? You've gone to the other end of the scale by the looks of it.
But yeah, it's only just kicked in, but it's looking like a good force 4 out there now. So they would have all been fretting about what wing size to choose and what foil size, and they can use whatever.
And what is the lower end then? What wind speed causes them problems at the lower end?
9 knots ish. Like, it's very difficult for them to go racing in 9 knots or less, because they do like being on their smaller foils, because they're so much faster on smaller foils as and when they know that they can consistently foil. So they could get up on an aeroplane wing at lower end speeds, and it's the same old problem that goes around in pretty much all forms of foil racing. It's the same problem that international bots have been trying to address in recent years, and they've sort of boxed themselves into foils that are really fixed in 9 knots. They're not able to do anything other than low ride in anything less than that, and they tend to choose not to go low riding in some conditions. And in wing foiling, and in kiteboarding, you just kite foiling, you don't have that choice at all, because you don't have enough reserve buoyancy. Whereas at least with the boat, you do.
Yeah.
So I've sort of been on a foiling tour through Europe with the Natural Worlds a couple of weeks ago, and then last week the Formula Kite Worlds, and now the wing foiling, and they've all got their quirks and their challenges. But the kites are so efficient that as long as you've got 4 or 5 knots of wind and they can get foiling, then they're immediately doing 30 knots of boat speed, because those they generate so much apparent wind. And these wing foilers are not as efficient as that, but they're much more user friendly and a lot less hassle and not as dangerous. And that's why recreationally wing foiling has become so popular. But as for a racing format, such as we're trying to do here, there's still a lot of bugs to iron out. People say it's going to be the next Olympic sport, isn't it? It's going to be the next Olympic sport. I say yes, if you can sort out that can't go racing in less than 9 knots issue.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, the lower end wind speed for a lot of high performance boats is sort of seems to be what's troubling them, really. Certainly in the America's Cup, watching that, we were talking about it last week about how the America's Cup at the moment are much, much better at the lower end of the wind speed, but they're still not totally there. And they've had a few light days in the last week down there. And, basically they are still having to tow the boats up onto the foils, but they're at about sort of 6 knots of breeze or 5 to 6 knots of breeze, but they're able to stay up on them. But they're not fully self-sufficient just yet. That may well come in time because we don't know what kind of foils they're using, what other tools and what other goodies they've got in their toy cupboard that they can pull out there. But as you would expect me to say, I've been nerding around the America's Cup again, and it's been really interesting. There's been all kinds of things going on. Ineos got christened. If you're super nerdy, you'd be looking at the American rudder. They put a new rudder on, which is pretty interesting, and that looked quite good in sort of punchy conditions. But aside from all of that, one of the things that really caught my eye this week was a news story that was on one of the Kiwi websites called Stuff. And it was an interview with Dan Bernasconi, who's the sort of lead designer for Emirates Team New Zealand. And he is the architect of this, pretty much the principal architect of this entire foiling generation. And he was saying in an interview with a chap called Todd Nile, who's a very well-respected radio journalist down there, he was saying that the Kiwis have now been or have been digitally modeling all the other teams. So now the boats are out in the open. They've been looking at the photographs, getting whatever intel they can, and they've modeled them all. And they've been running all these tests on them, just digital tests to see what the others can do. And surprise, surprise, their findings are, he says, that their boat is still the fastest. Well, maybe you'd expect him to say that. And actually, to be fair, he then went on to say, but you'd expect that. And he said, I'd expect all the other teams to be saying the same thing. He said, because there'd be something fundamentally wrong with your model if you hadn't designed your boat to be the fastest possible boat there. So maybe it was a bit of a non-story to start with, but then he went on and started talking about the details. And he was saying that having said all of that, there were some, and he didn't say which, but there were a few models that they put in there, so presumably team boats, that really got them scratching their heads. And he said, and his words to the effect of, we just sat there thinking, have we got it wrong or have they got it wrong? Which I thought was quite interesting coming from the lead designer from the Defenders. But he thinks that there could be quite a lot more difference between these boats on the race course. He actually said, I think it was something like 30 to 40 seconds a race. So on the one hand, we got some people saying it's going to be incredibly close. And then he's saying could be 30 or 40 seconds between them. Who knows?
What I don't understand is how there can be such a definitive right or wrong anyway, because what about where have you geared your boat for wind conditions, wave conditions, straight line speed versus maneuverability? The trade-off that we saw between Luna Rossa and Emirates Team New Zealand in the last America's Cup in Auckland. I mean, Luna Rossa was slower in a straight line, but wow, it was it was able to stick its elbows out and keep the other boat behind because it had superior maneuverability. So I don't really understand what this one boat's going to be 30 or 40 seconds faster or slower than other, because in what conditions? I mean, so I don't really get it, because it's horses for courses.
Well, it certainly makes, I think it would be fair to say it makes a lot of assumptions, doesn't it? Because it assumes that everybody's sailing at whatever, 100%, or at the same level. It assumes that there aren't going to be any breakdowns. It assumes that they don't get pushed out to the wrong side of the course where suddenly they got 2 knots less breeze, and that could be catastrophic, just 2 knots less in light wind conditions. So there's a whole load of factors that could just throw all of that out of the window. And I guess that they'd be the first to admit that as well. And I think there's an awful lot more to play for there. The other thing that strikes me is that we are getting into, and I know I keep saying it, but we are getting into the proper cup cycle. And those of us who've been there many times before, either as a journalist like you and I, or just as a very enthusiastic spectator, will know that this is where the mind games start. Not massively, but the America's Cup is full of mind games. And not all the stories that come out are necessarily just straightforward stories set to inform. Some of them are set to sort of unsettle other teams. And there's been quite a few quotes. I probably best not name names, but there's some people sort of questioning whether the recon thing is actually of any value. There are other people who are putting out figures about their boats, and I don't know. It's great fun. I like it. It's great fun because it's really interesting to see A, what they're saying, and then B, sit there thinking, I wonder why they're saying that. Why do they want to say that? So no, that's been really interesting. But the other thing at the other end of the scale, but still with my nerdy America's Cup hat on, something to happen very close by down the road here in Shamrock, the Saxon Wharf in Southampton. Shamrock V, the classic J, the beautiful green J, which was actually the smallest of the J's of the 1930s, owned by Sir Thomas Lipton, which has been a very familiar sight for many years, but has been out of sight for the last 7 years because she got damaged really badly in Bermuda in that cup in 2017, and got damaged there. And she's been restored in Southampton, and she's just been relaunched. It's taken them 7 years to do this amazing restoration on the boat, and she looks absolutely stunning. And she's going to be down, apparently, so I read, she's going to be down in Barcelona for, I don't know if she's going to compete in the J event down there, but she's certainly going to be down there around the America's Cup period. So that would be fantastic to see her down there, but great to see her back in the water. An absolutely gorgeous boat. I think you can probably find some pictures of her online somewhere, but anyway, it's well worth a look. So that got me excited.
Yeah, no, as it should do, and it makes me wonder what are these AC-75s going to be doing in 100 years at the American 100 years from now? Are people going to be talking about digging them out of the mud banks of some river somewhere where they were abandoned and restored them to their full foiling glory? It's be interesting. It's Shamrock was the AC-75 of its day. It's hard to imagine, but it was.
Yeah, definitely was. Yeah, I think, and it will be very fitting to see those boats alongside the AC. See the original J's alongside the AC-75s. Be absolutely fascinating. Couple of other things in other news. What else? Just look at my list over here actually to remind me. Oh yes, this weekend is the start of the it's called the New York Vendee. So it's the race from New York back to Les Sables d'Olonne for the IMOCAs. That's going to be very interesting, particularly interesting in the build up towards the Vendee Globe, but particularly interesting because there were some high profile casualties, I guess, in the race across over to New York, not least of all Sheahan that broke their foresteer, very nearly lost the rig. And so there's still some high profile sailors who've got to qualify for the Vendee Globe. So this race really does count. I know we keep saying that about every race, but this one really does. And it starts this weekend, and it's supposed to be a downwind race across the Atlantic. So it should be quite a good indication as to just what these boats can do and to what the pecking order looks like ahead of the Vendee.
Well done for keeping on top of it all, Matt. I'm going to be back in the UK next week, so I don't know if we get to do park run together around the park.
I'm going to practice this weekend.
better have you keep that unbroken record of beating me. Anyway, have a good week.
You
Look
too.
forward to catching up next week.
Nice one. Speak to you then.